Good evening and welcome to our third gridXdays session for 2025. And this week we're focusing on e-mobility and the smart integration of EV infrastructure into the grid. And we've got a suite of experts to discuss this very important topic with me today. So I would like to introduce Michael Druckenthaner, Key Account Manager at GoE, Germany and Austria's market-leading provider of AC charging stations for homes and destination charging sites. Michael connects with international partners to provide smart charging solutions for electric vehicles all around Europe. Michael, thanks for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Of course. And joining him, we have Davide de Michino, who's been bridging energy and digital innovation for 2 decades. He is an e-mobility task force chair at SmartEn, Smart Energy Europe, the European Business Association driving digital and decentralized energy solutions. Here he focuses on interoperability and data access, grid integration, market design, and customer experience. Davide heads the global product management and energy services, as well as small asset flexibility at NLX, a provider of integrated solutions that enhances energy efficiency. Davide is also a speaker at SmartEn and a contributor to EU Commission working groups focused on energy regulation and interoperability. Davide, pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
And finally, we have Tom Vandeweghe, head of EV charging at Interparking, who's been turning infrastructure into a foundation for sustainable mobility for over a decade. He leads the rollout of charging solutions across Belgium and ensures that drivers can charge easily and reliably wherever they are. He is also a board member at EV Belgium and shapes the discussions around charging standards, accessibility, and policy. Tom, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. Nice being here.
Great. All right, let's dive straight into the questions and start with a little bit of context of the rise of EVs. So, Michael, if we look at this year, in the first 7 months of 2025, global EV sales were up 27% compared to the same period in 2024. Europe has seen a 30% year-to-date increase in EV sales, with Germany and the UK leading the pack. From a policy and market design perspective, what are the most urgent steps that Europe must take to align charging infrastructure rollout with the rapid acceleration of EV adoption?
It's a good question. Well, I think in general, it is most important to enable EV drivers to charge their EVs where actually the car is parked the longest. So by that I mean to enable people to charge either at home or at the workplace or both. I mean, the reason for that is that in those places you are not in a hurry to charge. So it's not about charging speed. You can make use of flexibility, of grid stability issues, on available energy and so on. So of course this is easy to do for single family homes, but I think for policymakers it would be very important to make it as easy as possible to also include charging infrastructure in existing apartment buildings, office buildings, and the like. And I also think it would have great potential if companies that offer parking spaces to their employees were incentivized by policymakers to offer charging services to their employees, not just for the company vehicles, of course, but also for their private vehicles. Because this is not just an employee benefit, but also a service to the public, as it enables us to shift charging energy into times where PV surplus energy is oftentimes available.
Thanks, Michael. And Davide, if we kind of own in on regulation, so obviously paragraph 14A in Germany, G100 in the UK, kind of increasing complexity, DSO pressure on charge point operators, are putting more pressure to deliver flexibility and reshaping charging operations. Do you believe that these frameworks will ultimately deliver true grid value and support the EV rollout, or risk slowing the momentum?
I would say it's not the best form of flexibility, to be honest. No, while majority I would say, of the expert, we prefer a market-based flexibility. This sounds more like an urgency action, no? To support the grids, because essentially in Germany there are, I would say, a quite complex situation in the DSO grids. So this action, this provision was more for me to, I would say, to support the urgency to sustain the grid, while I think that as industry we need more market-based solution. There are, we know already, for high loads, high voltage or medium high voltage requirement in terms of disconnection capability, okay, that need to be used in urgency situation. This maybe, okay, we can accept that can be used in some context of the CPO charging sites, but not on all, no? For sure there will be a good or maybe a necessary action when we have the heavy duty vehicle electrification, where we will talk about the site of different megawatt of power. That makes sense, but it's not the I would not call flexibility, to be honest, okay? Is I would say an emergency tool for the DSO that obviously we understood, because the grids need to be up and running. They have a very, I would say, a push from the regulation and from the government to have a proper SLA of the grids. So it makes sense, but it's not. I would not call flexibility, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Obviously, a big topic in this session is flexibility. How would you define flexibility?
There's different forms to define flexibility. I would simplify to say that it's a capability of a user load to reduce consumption or increase generation in case of a market signal. That can be simple, like a tariff, no? Is more cheap in some hour of the day, higher on other hour, or can be very complex, like response to the frequency regulation that need to happen in milliseconds. Okay, so is a wide range of services, but at the end, at the core is the capability to modulate a load or modulate a generation up and down. Okay.
And Micha, if we look a little bit deeper, you said before that charging speed isn't the most important factor. So how do we kind of balance users' desire for speed with affordability, with not overloading the grid, take all of these different factors into consideration at different charging sites as well, at home, at work, at destinations as well?
Sure. Well, I think obviously there is a need for high power charging. Always when you are driving larger distances. But studies show that once we are getting into a very high portion of EVs being on the road, then probably high power charging on the roads, on the highways, will only be a rather small part of total energy charged. So we as an AC charging provider, when we look in the future, we are actually going kind of the opposite direction. So in research projects, with local energy providers, but also with technology companies like Infineon that we do. We are trying to establish the possibility to have lots of charging points that share infrastructure actually to reduce the cost per individual charging point as much as possible. You charge slowly, you might not charge continuously, but you could then take this potential to charge very, very grid friendly. So this could be a solution, not next year, not the year after that, but something for the future, where there is, I think, great potential to offer lots of very slow charging points, for example, at work sites, but also at places like park and ride, park houses, for example, but also, of course, publicly at night for people who do not have specified parking spaces available for them. So this is where we see our company going, and I think this will be a very relevant part of the market, as it would be very easy to use and has great potential, and is the easiest way to be very, very grid friendly, charging a lot of EVs.
Davide, do you have anything to add to that, of this balance between kind of speed, affordability, grid integration?
I would agree with Michael. I think that I would say, in 10 years will be a mix of everything, So we need to have all, We need to have, as a EV driver, HPC on the highway because we want to travel. We need to charge at office. We need to charge when you go to the gym, as we call opportunity charging. So there will be a mix. Now, obviously, we are in the transition, and it's not in that way. You need to decide when you want to charge. But there is some geography. Norway is a good example when it's not even a problem to find a station. When you need to charge, you will find. No problem. I would say no need to plan in long time before. When you need to charge, as you do with normal AC vehicle, you find a fuel station. You charge. You do the petrol. It's the same with the EV. It's just a question of market maturity. We will arrive in that point, and in some countries, as I said, is already well positioned on that. So, as I said, Michael, we will need everything. We need a slow IC, medium IC, and HPC. When we talk about passenger vehicle, when we talk about heavy duty vehicle, obviously the situation is completely different. I would say that we need to move, but it's the same. They will need to have slow charging, meaning a 350 kilowatt, and maybe high power charging that for heavy duty vehicle will be megawatt charging system, so 1-2 megawatt of power. So it's the same.
I would definitely agree. I think the transportation sector is, of course, a separate issue, definitely. But I think, as I said before, so there is great potential in creating lots of charge points where you can just plug your car in the evening and unplug it in the morning. No blocking fees, nothing like that. Just very slow charging, maybe just for 2 or 3 hours over the whole time you're plugged in. Just very flexible.
Yeah. And in line with this, we actually recently did a customer survey asking people where and when they charge. And we found that 53% of charging on average takes place at home, 15% at work, 32% at public charging stations. Obviously, this was a small group, so it's not reflective of everyone, but kind of shows a general trend. Michael, given this distribution, how do you think infrastructure investment should be balanced between private, professional, public networks?
Well, probably I can't go into the specifics, but I think that there is great potential to increase the share of charging that is done at work. So for now, this is an issue for companies that they normally create charging stations mainly for their company vehicles that have to be charged. And basically as a side effect, their employees that might arrive at work with a private EV can also use these charging stations. But I think it would be great if the corporations were incentivized to offer charging possibilities, to make it companies as easy as possible, to not hassle them with taxes and stuff like that for giving this benefit, because it's not just a benefit to the employee, but also kind of a public service, because this gives a lot of flexibility to the grid as a whole, basically, if you have this option to connect the cars to the grid over the daytime. So I think this is very important.
Yeah, I would add the one thing very important, because I connect to Michael now in terms of workplace charging. Is a huge opportunity in terms of flexibility, because currently all the TSO and the DSO have a big problem, the solar curve, when they have a huge overproduction between 10 to 2 p.m., okay, more or less, that moving during the season. And it's a huge potential because workplace charging is happening. We can scale, as Michael said, I completely agree. But we are increasing the problem, because majority of people go to work between 8, 9, when there is the first load peak in the normal load, national load curve. And so with the smart charging capability, we can follow this curve and move easily charging session and charging power during the peak of the morning for the entire morning, because people need to leave 4, 5, depending on how much time you spend at work. And so it's a huge opportunity both for implicit flexibility, because a lot of company now is embracing PV generation, but also in terms of explicit, because as I said, DSO have problems specific on that. So workplace will be a game changer on that.
Yes, I would add, yes, definitely. So I kind of left it out before. Smart charging, of course, is the key. Yes, as you say, it's of course not the solution if all the cars on the company parking lot start charging at 8 in the morning. So that's not the idea. It has to be smartly managed and delayed in a way so that it is most efficient to use the grid. And as we know, most cars are only moved like 40 kilometers a day or so. So in average, you can easily achieve that by only charging for an hour or even less.
Tom, would you agree with this, of kind of leveraging this potential of when cars are sitting there idle a lot of the time and balancing out these loads?
Yeah, 100%. I think that we are the workplace number one car park in a lot of cities throughout Europe. And there we see a potential that is huge of flexibility. So we're also looking to these kind of optimizations, and it's both ways. It's an optimization for us as a CPO, but it's also an optimization for the customer, because by optimizing our charging session, we can with guaranteeing the same margin to my shareholders, I can lower my prices for the EV driver. So even with an investment of a sophisticated smart charging solution, we can manage our charging sessions better without touching the quality of service for the customer, because he will not even notice it that we shift his charging session. And the customer at the end of the charging session, he will receive a lower cost on his invoice. So I think it's in 2025 where we have an EV uptake that is quite important in some countries. I think this is now today the moment to start with these kind of evolution and deployment in your facilities, or a car park or an office car park, etc. So I think there is, this is where we need to work on each side. On the other way, I think it's the whole value chain and the whole chain of mobility needs to work together also, because I see also some threats is like on a CPO side, we can do a lot of investments, a lot of solutions, install a lot of solutions, but if at the end on the MSP side, there is a complete other tarification model linked onto a driver subscription with his charge card, then we're losing all this power to incentivize the customer and giving him this advantage, because we have a lot of cases where we have lower prices. MSPs take another complete tariff structure onto the charging session, and the advantage is for the MSP and not going to the driver. So it's something that we're deploying scalable again, step by step, and really pointing out issues in the whole value chain. And if you have a solution in the beginning at the CPO side, also at the end the driver needs to have the profit also, and not a middleman in between. And this is for us a real big issue, and it can break our sector. And this is why it's a reach out to all the people in the sector. Everybody needs to earn his money and needs to do his business, but we need to work together to make the sector boom together and offer a great product, offer competitive pricing for the user and the driver. And I think there are opportunities, but there are also threats in my eyes.
Davide, do you want to add anything to that, particularly how we can work together to ensure competitive pricing?
That's a complex, no? With the different player around the value chain, okay? So sometimes it's complex. I agree that we need to put the user at the center of everything. It's a little bit complex when you talk about flexibility services, because there is a lot of players around that need to do something and want their space in terms of business case. No, there are in reality some CPO that are already operating flexibility and are not moving value to the final user. I think that can make sense in terms of a sustainable business model for CPO that invests a lot of money. Sometimes the utilization rate are very low in terms of EV penetration, so it can help to have it. As I said, we are in the transition. Who will be the future? We still don't know. But there are things happening, and everyone need to understand everything from the end user perspective, the driver that need to understand what means to have I would say a reduced power to charge in public. For example, there are in any MSP mobile app, there is the indication if the station is under a flexibility program or whatever it is, from like Germany's mandate story, the Article 14, to other more sophisticated market. So users don't know if you only see nominal power. I will charge 150 kilowatt. Yeah, 150 kilowatt. In reality, maybe it's 50 because there is an urgency on the grids. And it is not the case. So there are no mature infrastructure communication protocols to deliver this end to end. So it's really a transition and require time. Okay.
You brought up a really interesting point there, Davide, utilization rates. We've heard from some market players that utilization rates are too low. And so it's just we've recently published this article on the chicken or the egg of electric cars and chargers, of what comes first, how do we balance that? Tom, do you think this is something that regulation needs to force, or will the market kind of eventually figure it out? What's your take?
It's quite a difficult one. If we look at the uptake in some countries and you have some red light, green light effects, like in Germany, for example, there are incentives, there is an uptake, the incentive drops, it slows down. So is it something that we need in the begin phase? Maybe yes. We see it in Belgium, like fiscality for corporate cars is making the whole sector boom. We are a very company car driven country, so it's easy. If you have some switches where you can turn on, off, and certainly on, then you have a whole market that booms quite rapidly. Is it sustainable? I don't think so. Our government is having discussions to have our budget under control. So is this something that's sustainable in the future? I don't think so. At a certain way, it must be a viable product and market on itself. So, but to force a kind of a little push in the back, it's maybe a good thing. And then again, the chicken or the egg, charging station infrastructure or the car. I think if you bring the cars, the market will follow. I think GOE and L will follow directly if the cars are there. So I don't think it's a question of range anxiety or so on. I think there is enough infrastructure already, certainly in Belgium, but also in other countries. I think we drive a lot throughout Europe, and there is no issue to charge. So I think when you bring the cars, the market will deploy even more chargers, etc. But is it a sustainable model that it's a government-driven push in the back for a lot of years? That's another question. I don't think so.
So our charging report survey also found that 70% of public charging station users plan their stops in advance, and 56% select stations based on price per kilowatt hour. We've already talked about competitive pricing, but Tom, what's your perspective on making charging parks, charging stations more attractive for users, putting the end user in the center? What are the most important factors? Obviously price, but also beyond that.
We are very lucky that 100% are planning to stop at our location, because we are just an end destination. We are a car park in the city center, and people use our facility to go to the cinema, to do shopping. So we have the rate of 100%. So this is the positive point. At the end, we need to persuade and convince the customer to charge at our facility. First of all, we see it as People use it a lot today as kind of a convenience, to be honest. I think people like to park their car next to the elevator on the -1 instead of the -5, because due to fire safety regulation, we need to put charging stations next to the exits and the entry. So it's kind of a convenience premium car park spot. This is something that we notice. Then again, for charging and pricing, I think there we need to have a lot of trust on AFIR for the future, and we trust in this very hard, because when I drive through Europe and I use a lot of charging stations, I always check what is the price, and not only digitally, because even digitally it's very hard to find sometimes, but also on the spot, where for me it must be really clear, visible and transparent. What is my cost for this charging session? And for me, I think this is still a big issue today that is frustrating a lot of customers. It's not transparent at all. So I think there we can all, again, it's a reach out to the market to convince the charger to charge at your location. Start with being transparent on your own pricing. And that's the step one. Then a driver can start to compare, because when you're not transparent, he cannot even compare. Okay, digitally upfront, you can do your analysis, but on a weekly basis, you have other stuff to do than analyze charging session prices. In the past, we knew for petrol on the highway, it's more expensive than in inner cities away from the highway. This was the split. On EV charging, you can go from 80 cents per kilowatt hour to 30 cents per kilowatt hours for the same kilowatt hours that is pumped into your car. So I think working on pricing transparency is really step one. And then we see that a lot of customers come back. They are comfortable, they know what they accept as a pricing strategy, and then they accept, okay. And then when you ask 50 cents or 30 cents, the driver accepts your deal. And then the market, when a facility next to you has better pricing and you see an evolution in your usage, okay, then it's the market that takes place. And then you start to play with your competition next to you. But I think being transparent at this moment is number one. And then having all this means of payment that are existing, like direct payment, all MSP cards, so the interoperability, having as much as possible MSPs accepted on your facilities and EV chargings is very important. And then come with an own proposition. So we also have our own charging card that you can use in our facilities without extra upmark. So without the MSP costs, without the roaming costs, it's the price on the charging station is the price on the invoice. And this is what guarantees people and gives people trust, that there are no surprises at the end of the invoice of sometimes hundreds euros extra. We have a lot of cases where we have charging sessions up to 3,000 euros, where people park at our airport facilities. And this is what we need to avoid at all times. So I think transparency and AFIR must really be deployed and used in our sector, I think.
Davide, do you agree that price transparency is key, and how do you think we can reach that?
It's a word complex. I agree that we need transparency, and I think that we will arrive soon on that. AFIR put all the recommendation that will arrive soon also in terms of retrofit on the street. So we will have the price on the screen. I think all the MSP mobile app show, in majority of the case, the exact rates. I think that where the things get complicated is when there is penalty after the charging session. In some countries, some CPO apply penalty. Is where the situation also in terms of transparency is not that is not transparent. It's hard for the citizen, for the driver to calculate it. So he maybe stop 1 hour after the end of the session and maybe found €10 of penalty inside the invoice. This is from one side, I would say, the education of the EV driver. But one side, I agree that in the way the e-mobility charging, public charging experience work in terms of roaming agreements is complex. No? We create as industry, and we are happy to have this, but this obviously overcomplicate from the, I would say, transparency price of point of view, but also from technical point of view. Some misconception of the driver is also because there is a lot of roaming agreements, also peer-to-peer agreements that sometimes is not working from technology point of view. So it's a complex environment. It's not fossil fuel era. This is the electricity era, and that is more complex. We designed that way, and I think that we need to improve day by day and learning from what is happening. In terms of transparency, I think that I don't think that from my point of view is the first problem on the e-mobility sector. Okay.
And Michael, what if we look at transparency in the home? How important is that for EV users to understand what's happening with their charging, to see their savings and things like that?
Well, I'm sure transparency is very important for public charging, but I think it's also a lot about visibility of charging stations. I think before we were talking a little bit about the chicken and egg problem with charging stations. And to be honest, I think if at this point there were twice as many public charging stations, people who drive petrol cars would probably not really see the difference, right? They're not looking at statistics or something. You do not have a feeling for availability of charging stations if you do not need them. And the big difference is, of course, that petrol stations you see from far away because you have columns. The columns show the prices, stuff like that. And this is what you're used to. And so I think there might be kind of a shift, kind of a turning point once the large corporations that operate petrol stations incorporate more and more charging into their stations. So then it will be visible. Wow, there I can do a charging stop, and 2 miles further I can also do a charging stop. So then this feeling of few charging stations goes away. I think that's important. And of course, the issue of pricing comes kind of along with that. Maybe we will have less roaming services and the like, but more just-in-time ad hoc charging in the future. That might be a way to go. We will see about that. I sometimes compare it with, I think we are in very, very early stages. Probably we all remember when mobile communication via phone was very new. Then we had very complicated tariffs. You had to be very careful to not dial numbers in a different operator network because that might be expensive. And of course, in foreign countries, it was very expensive. And maybe even you got to pick 5 friends with certain numbers that were especially cheap to call to. This all sounds ridiculous if we think about it now, because now everything is very easy in these terms. And I think that a few years down the road, things might be just as easy for EV charging.
I really like that analogy. I remember on a brick Nokia phone texting and it's taking so long to send one text message and counting how many you could send per month. Davide, kind of taking on this analogy, how important is it to have solutions that are easy for customers, but also go across borders? So, that you don't go into a different country and have to search, okay, where do I charge? How can we create that ease, particularly all across Europe?
Yes, obviously, people move, fortunately, and good move in the future, electric. So for sure, we need that things work smoothly cross-border, starting from Europe. Okay, let's start from Europe, and here is where the I would say mobility service provider really play a crucial role on that. In terms of both providing right experience for the driver to look for the exact station and to be sure that is ready to charge, but also behind the scenes to make all the technical, I would say, process works smoothly. No, as we said before, also that I think that now we are in a good, I would say, phase of that now. 10 years before, also 5 years before now. So where I'm at in terms of interoperability, roaming, etc. And now I would say that is quite mature protocols, communication platform. There we are happy that there are some roaming platform like Abject, Girev that help also small player to work in this environment. There is a complexity when you do cross-bordering because there is also different fiscal process that need to comply. So for MSP, it's not super easy to I would say to have a business in different country. Okay, it's a little bit complex also to scale if you want to really scale. If you manage invoice by end, okay, it's fine. But to scale add our complexity. That's for charging. Obviously, when we talk about interoperable cross-border vehicle to grid, okay, we will arrive. Maybe my daughter, we will see it, no? Meaning that we still need to make it happen in the context of a one DSO, and then we will need to scale. So obviously, this kind of services will be hard to have this kind of interoperability, cross-border, etc., etc. This is one of the pain points from the automotive sector with the new regulation on both the RFG from the Acer, and but also the idea to put in the car certification about the grid in terms of voltages as some technical stuff of the grid. I don't think that we will arrive in that kind of cross-border interoperability soon.
Okay. And now that we've mentioned vehicle to grid, let's dive into bidirectional charging. Obviously, huge potential to leverage the flexibility of electric cars that are being rolled out. Tom, how important do you think bidirectional charging will be in the next few years compared to other features? How much should we prioritize it? Where do you see its potential? And what are the barriers still?
Our vision is very simple on that, because at the beginning of our conversation we start talking about we need to organize our facilities in-house, behind the meter, in our house, our charging sessions more intelligent and smart, and we were talking about shifting to the noon, and we were talking about linking it to dynamic energy contracts, and it's really managing in our house. And I think there the market is starting there. So and having these debates on vehicle to grid, where there are a lot of challenges there in the market, and how many cases are there in proof of concepts that are successful? It's a handful of them in each country, maybe. So it's kind of a proof of concept environment, and it's the future and it's the solution, and etc. etc. We see it as it's not our focus to count on this for a solution. Our main priority now is at the beginning of the conversation, is installing a smart charging installation, is working in our house, getting our charging sessions up and running, is taking up these opportunities together with the threats that we talked about, and setting this up to have a better customer satisfaction for the customer, a better pricing, and for us even a better margin by using these tools like a gridX. And I think for us the main focus 100% is on that storyline, and we do not focus on another storyline, and we work on that now the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years. We set it up, it will be tweaking, and it will be adapting, it will be learning by doing, very operational, happy flows and unhappy flows, and then in 3 years we take a little time to breathe, we look at the market, where are we, and then if we are matured, if the market is matured on vehicle to grid, okay, let us talk about it. We install every puzzle piece in our chain of EV charging is V2G ready. So the charging installations need to be V2G ready. You never know. So every puzzle piece is V2G ready. Then we leave it up to the experts to deploy it in a proof of concept, to talk to TSOs, DSOs, okay, how we'll manage it. Then we see some test cases. We let somebody else do like some first cases in production, and then we will follow the market. And this is what is our objective on the roadmap, how we see this evolution at Interparking.
Michael, would you agree with this, of the kind of laying the foundation with smart charging technology now and then waiting a few more years for all of the puzzle pieces for vehicle to grid and vehicle to home to come together?
Yes, very much. So I think that when it comes to smart charging, we have so much potential that can be used before we even go to vehicle to grid. Of course, vehicle to grid is a great concept and has huge potential. But there are also great hurdles for that, both technically, but also in creating the right business cases for it. But when it comes to using smart charging technology, just shifting the time when you consume the energy with your car, the technology is there, it's proven. It works. The business models are there. You can either do this, it's incentivize smart charging by dynamic tariffs, but also, of course, maybe there's another way in the future. For example, some energy providers are going the way to incentivize giving flexibility in charging time by rewarding the flexibility that you allow the software to charge your car. So with a kind of a benefit model that makes it more accessible for many users because they do not have the risk of energy tariffs being too volatile. So many people do not like that much. So the energy price would still be fixed. But by granting some kind of flexibility, the user then would get benefits, financial benefits. So I think for smart charging, to use flexibility, the business models are there, the technology is of course there and proven, it's not that hard. And there is so much potential because right now most cars are not really smart charged, to be honest. And so let's focus on that. I would totally agree. Let's focus on this part. There is a lot of potential, and of course down the road, for some fringe cases where you have especially bad conditions in the grid, it might be beneficial to use vehicle to grid as well. But yes, this will be a little down the road, and I think not that a big part of the whole flexibility picture.
Yeah, thanks. And Davide, where do you see the kind of biggest levers in the short term for leveraging flexibility with electric cars to reduce congestion and also keep customers happy?
I think that in some countries there are still we are far away to enabling it from a commercial point of view. No, technology is there. No matter what. Even will be more push in terms of AFI requirement. You see the Delegated Act some weeks ago that mandated something also on private. So the technology will be there in terms of use cases. Still in some country there are no good mechanisms to extract value on flexibility on both implicit and explicit. There are some countries that I would say are more advanced, some countries that are less advanced. See, for example, Italy, Spain, where I pretty know what is there. So obviously this is the first things that we need to talk about. No, we need a value. If there are no value, why the customer want to do something? Remove me 14A in Germany, not that is mandate, but so I think that is where also association like SmartEn is working a lot in terms of advocacy. We need to enable the condition to create this value and to access to this value practically, no? Because there are a lot of in a lot of country, we say, okay, yeah, so EV can access to this particular revenue stream. But in fact, when you go in the detail, it's impossible for the technology barrier, for the requirement in terms of metering, telemetry flow, etc. So we really need, essentially in Europe, to really enable this small asset to play on the market. This is the first thing. Then the other, everything is second. As soon as we will put some money on the table, all the stakeholders of industry will move forward, and they are moving in some country where there is this value is demonstrated, no, that work. In V1G, in V2G, the situation is completely different. So meaning that I would say the backbone of the technology is existing, but I would say the real technology mass market is not existing yet. No, we still have in some deployment proprietary protocol, not using -20, that is the unique protocol that is approved to do an interoperable V2G. Still, there is a lot of, I would say mess, but a lot of conversation about the grid codes, all the rules that drive the DSO grids in terms of both the loads, but also generator. When we talk about V2G, it's a generator. And so there is a huge, I won't say confusion, but it is really, really complex. And so there will be is happening a huge effort across industry on the network codes. And then there is obviously from the other side, so this is the regulation. From the other side, there is an ambition of the key stakeholder. Automotive, there is our ambition. Charger manufacturer is its own ambition. Aggregator have their own ambition. So this is why it's really complex to talk about V2G. It's a good speech, will happen for sure. Every industry is pushing on that. Yes, there is no one industry that is not moving on that. So that's for sure that all industry is moving on that, but will be a very slow transition, no? Because will be complex. I would say now we are happy. We are seeing some pilot up, I would say small scale commercial proposition. There is a Renault with the Renault 5 in France 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago. Not interoperable, but you need to buy everything from the Renault. Okay, good. It's good to start. In Germany, you saw 2 weeks ago, no, the announcement from BMW of iX3 with the on to first V2G proposition. There is BYD with Octopus and Zaptec in UK. So something is happening. Obviously, it's very early stage. I would say from a marketing point of view, is a good sales speech to differentiate. Obviously, it's not putting the bread on the table of everyone now. But in the future, for sure, I think that for automotive and for aggregator will be one of the main value stream. Okay, and we need to understand this for passenger vehicle, and when the heavy duty vehicle will arrive, will be completely game changer in the entire industry. Okay.
And you mentioned their ambitions. If we look at success metrics for the rollout of EV charging infrastructure, how should we measure that? How should we kind of set these targets, do you think? Should it be number of charge points, capacity of charge points, or should it go beyond that and look at the capacity that has the ability to be shifted? Or what's your take on that?
I think that's depend of the KPI we need to read this. Now, if it's a KPI designed for a normal driver, I think that is fair that the number of charge point is a good metrics that everyone understands. No? Maybe if you can add also this weighted on the number of circulating fleet is more appropriate. But when you talk about a KPI for a CPO is not enough. No? It is you need to know more information, or the same from the DSO. We need to go above the level of the technology and the grids, the capacity available to measure it. So there are some conversation happening, for example, in Italy, from the authority of the energy to, I would say, promote, let's switch this word, to the CPO, a better use of the capacity, no, by using load management solution and to give a discounted tariff, grid tariff to this. So that's will be interesting in the future. But I say in terms of KPI, I think that number of charge points in mobility is fine. Maybe in the future we need to understand more the number of charge points, the number of available capacity to charge in terms of kilowatt, maybe, yes, in the future. But now is more than fine to have a charge point number.
Tom, would you agree with that?
We are quite focused on the utilization rate. And there we have quite focused because we want to have enough offer at each moment for our customers. And not having customers driving through a car park just searching for a charging station. So we are quite autistic looking at this KPI because we want to have a good offer. We are an end destination, as I explained. It could happen like quite a lot that customers arrive in a car park with 10 or 15 or 20% battery and counting on Interparking as CPO and car park facilitator on a decent charging service and the possibility to charge. So we are very focused, like, okay, what is the occupancy, what is the utilization rate, time used percentage. We look at it, the difference between weekends and weeks, because there are major differences in our car park business, like shopping in the week is much calmer than weekends. So this is for us the main priority. We have customers, we want them to come to our car park, we want to offer a good service in car park, in car wash, but also in charging. So we need to have a charging point ready to charge for each customer wanting to charge. So this is our main focus today on these numbers.
Thanks. And we've just about run out of time, so I want to ask an open and conclusive question. Looking ahead to 2030, what do you think will be the greatest bottleneck for EV integration? Physical grid capacity, operational flexibility, any other things that we've mentioned, and where should we direct investment, do you think, in the lead up to this vision? Davide.
For sure, the grid capacity is the main topics. Now, essentially, 2030, we will also see 2030 was one of the first year when heavy-duty vehicle will start we will start to see on the graph of the total vehicle, no? Because we will start to have a vehicle on the street. So, for sure, the grid capacity is one of the key, I would say, bottleneck. Also, if I would say all the DSO are moving on that in different way, depending also on the resources that they have. But this for sure will be the one, I don't know if solve, but to manage.
Tom?
Yeah, I think the grid everybody will answer the grid capacity. So I think this is the main challenge. If you want to sell kilowatt hours, you need capacity to be able to sell them. So I think this is really the main thing. And even if we see some countries where we are active as CPO and having a lot of contacts with DSO, where we already have today blocking cities where there is no capacity for the next coming 3 years. And we are still at the beginning of this journey. And this is quite shocking that being just at the beginning of this journey, and we need still have 10,000, 100,000 of cars extra, this is quite a big challenge. So this for sure. Another thing that I see where I'm counting on is like the brains of Europe, like guys that are now 15 years old or 20 years old, go to university, that will start some startup and scale up companies with some new solutions, and they will give us insights on a lot of things. When I look back at 12 years ago, an only export of a CDR was my only mean of monitoring. And if we look at today, what are the possibilities? And if you're looking at load management, if you are looking at monitoring of energy contracts, if we are looking at smart charging and where it's going, and it's going faster and faster, and new companies are going, monitoring of uptime, alerting, self-healing things of your installation, self-healing capabilities. So I'm counting really on young, smart people that are living in Europe and are still on school, that are coming with new solutions for all of that. So there is, yes, a bottleneck, but I'm really counting on some young guys and girls that come up with other solutions that will help us also. So let us be positive, I would say.
A very optimistic view. I like it. Thank you. And Michael, closing words.
Yeah, thank you. I think we do not have much disagreement on that, basically. So I think in the new energy industry, there is a lot going on in terms of technology, in terms of IoT devices that are getting more and more available, in terms of energy management systems. It's not just about EVs, but it's about electrification in general. So there's a lot going on. There are great new business models. Not everything will be a success. Not every company will survive. But I think the concepts are there. The technology is there. So I don't think that the operational flexibility is a problem. So in the end, the infrastructure will be a problem in some places. This is, of course, much slower to be developed, of course, in comparison to data integration and market design and so on. But I think I would totally agree with Tom. I wouldn't be pessimistic. I think that oftentimes the outlooks of how much grid capacity we need are a bit exaggerated, because oftentimes they still are thinking in the old ways without using flexibility to its full extent and so on. So that's what I would like to close with from my side.
Thank you very much. Definitely an optimistic outlook there, and an exciting time ahead. So thank you so much for joining me today on the gridXdays panel, and we'll see you next Wednesday, where we're talking about flexibility, more generally, everything, so big topic. But thank you for joining me.